You're listening to the Deepening Your Faith podcast with Daniel Eichelberger, pastor of Providence Baptist Church in McLean, Virginia. Deepening Your Faith exists to help you grow in the grace and knowledge of Jesus Christ for the glory of God and the good of His church. For more about Deepening Your Faith, you can go to pbcmclean.org. Hey, Daniel Eichelberger here. I want to tell you about the newest episode of Deepening Your Faith that'll come out this Thursday. It's with Kelly White. Kelly White works with a wonderful organization called Assist Pregnancy Center. And what they do is they love on women who are considering terminating their pregnancies. Assist comes alongside them, gives them all the resources and information they need to make the decision and to come to the realization of who is inside them, a distinct, living, and whole human person, and that they would take their pregnancies to full term. So we're going to have Kelly this Thursday. And speaking of the pro-life movement, for this episode of Deepening Your Faith, we're going to be giving away this resource, The Case for Life by Scott Klusendorf. This is the one resource that I consult frequently if I want to know the scientific and logical reasons for the pro-life movement. And so we're going to be giving this away. What you need to do is you need to go to this episode of Deepening Your Faith on the Deepening Your Faith YouTube page and be the first to comment on it, to like it, and then either to subscribe or share that episode. If that's you, we're going to be sending this to you free of charge. So I hope you enjoy this newest episode of Deepening Your Faith with our guest, Kelly White. God bless you. Kelly White, good to have you with us, and I'm excited to talk to you about the ministry of Assist Pregnancy Center. Can you kind of tell us about that ministry, what you guys are all about, and your mission and what you do?
Yes, we are a pro-life pregnancy center that is different than a pregnancy resource center. We're located in Annandale, Virginia. We've been in existence since 1990.
Okay.
At that time, we were a pregnancy resource center, which is basically a center that provides love and support and material things primarily.
Okay.
Financial support to women. But a pregnancy clinic also provides medical services and some other things, meaning we're under the licensure of a medical doctor. We have real nurses, real ultrasound technicians, all of that. In contrast to what you might hear about fake clinics, we are a real clinic doing
You're legit.
Real things with real, regulatory stuff over us. So
Got it.
So we provide pregnancy testing, we provide ultrasounds, we provide one-on-one coaching, we provide parenting classes in English and Spanish, we provide baby showers, and more. So there's a lot we do. We're trying to come alongside a woman in crisis. We target, meaning our marketing is focused on women who plan to abort, as opposed to maybe women in need who plan to carry, but there are a lot of resources available to them, and we will connect them to those. But we save, we want to bring in women who are looking to abort.
So you'll help both, but you're focused on more women that are seeking abortion?
Well, actually, the slots, the appointments are saved for women.
So that's really your primary focus, which is great. I mean,
we don't, like I said, turn our back on the others. We will find out the need, connect them to the resource, and make sure they get helped. But the appointments are saved for those who are seeking abortion or who are undecided.
And how many women will you get in a week or a month?
I'm going to tell you a year because of the stats I'm a little more familiar with. I would say 700-ish.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. Okay. So about 2 a day.
Yes. Sometimes we'll have 3. Sometimes we'll have 0.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but on average, if that's pretty impressive.
That's the goal. Yeah. And it waxes and wanes, and we try to figure out why.
Yeah.
Some weeks we're flooded, and some weeks there's hardly anybody, and it's confusing. And we have theories, and we're looking at it. Some of it can be marketing, some,
I was just going to ask, just getting your name out there.
It's a Google search, that's finding us. It costs a lot of money because it's dealing with a lot of things. We've got people competing with us for that spot. We want to be in the top few that she gets when she Googles abortion.
Who's competing with you for those slots? Is it similar ministries as yours,
No.
or is it those who are on the other side of?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we want the abortion-minded woman to come to us
Right.
just to get all the information. You know, we say you can't be pro-choice if you don't have any choices. So we want to give you choices besides abortion. And so, you know, we provide abortion information, and we will pop up in those searches that abortion pops up
Right.
in as well.
Do you guys have someone who specializes in SEO and make search engine optimization and making sure you guys are
Well, we don't, not on staff, but we
hire someone out? on
we
the
hire
outside?
somebody
Yeah.
who does
Smart.
that, and it's requiring constant, you know, tweaking. And yes, it costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's almost, in fact, even at our fundraising events, we have cited those numbers, and it's almost embarrassing to, you know, say it to donors. It costs this many thousands, because I think somehow we think it would be more satisfying to provide that much in formula, you know.
Right.
But if we don't get people coming to us, we may as well go home.
That's right.
So-
your door's closed in a
Right,
sense.
Right.
Yeah. And we live in a digital world. Their relationships take place in the digital world. So it makes sense that you guys would have to
Right.
invest that money, as sad as it is. But
Right.
I mean, it's really like a billboard, but,
Yeah, it
but
is.
digital. Yeah.
It's the only way, actually.
Yeah. And it's expensive.
It's very expensive.
I know. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, tell us about your role at Assist. What do you do? What's your primary ministry there? And tell us more about that.
I'm the church partnerships coordinator
Okay.
and volunteer coordinator.
So you work with people like us.
So I work with people like you. So I'm basically the relationship person who gets to know. We have about 35 churches who are actively partnering with us.
Okay.
A number of churches that, you know, do to some degree, but about 35 who partner with us either through volunteers or podcasts or giving or
Yeah.
any number of things. And so, you know, our director's also involved, but there's somebody who's the one reaching out and meeting the people, and I try to have liaisons in different churches, and I speak at youth groups and adult Sunday schools and
Okay.
bring volunteers in, and so I'm just kind of the face to local churches.
Right. So if local churches want to get involved in your ministry and help the pro-life cause, they're
All
probably
right.
going to be talking to you.
Yes.
All right. Well, good. Well, then it's good you're here.
Yes.
Hopefully many people will see this and they can get connected with you and
Yeah.
network and serve the ministry.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, since that's your role, how can churches or how should churches get involved in the pro-life movement? What do you think they should be doing?
Well, if you're asking what is the perfect, what does it look
Sure.
like in a perfect world?
Yeah.
I mean, not all churches share the same position that you and I do on abortion and life. So sorry.
It happens. Don't worry. Uh-oh.
My fault.
It's okay.
Of the however many churches could potentially,
You want to get that a lot closer to you.
okay,
Swing. Yeah, there you go. There you go.
of however many could potentially partner with us in the area, you know, not all do. Some may
Right.
not know about the opportunity. Others take a different position. So of the pro-life churches,
Do you have any idea in the area that you work, how many churches would you say more than half are, or would you say less than half?
I'm not sure. I'd be afraid to say. I'd probably be wrong. I do know that there's a lot of churches around, and not all are partnering with us, but there's also other pro-life ministries
Right.
that others are partnering with, and we try not to. I won't reach out to a church who I know is partnering with another pro-life ministry because they're
Right.
doing great work.
Right.
Go
Yeah,
support
yeah.
them. So
They're not the competition.
no. So how would they ideally support us? Ideally, one, preach life from the pulpit. And I've heard you do that. You do a great job.
Oh, praise God.
Not everybody does. It's an awkward, it's a hard, it's a controversial topic. So that'd be number one. They could pray for us. There's a lot going on, you know. However, the Holy Spirit led, not just for our whatever fundraising success, but that in that room today, that woman who's scared to death, would change her
Right.
mind. That ultrasound technician would be sensitive to the spirit again and know how to come alongside this woman in the best way. That, you know, like we pray for pastors and even, you know, what's going on in their personal lives, pray for the staff at ministry centers, pregnancy centers, you know, they're just under a lot of stress. I can't say that I'm one of those people. The staff at our clinic who see the clients,
Right.
they are the ones who are with women who are making life and death decisions every day.
Yeah.
My job's a little happier, but it is
Yeah.
hard. It is hard and it's stressful.
Yeah. They're in the foxholes, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm assuming all of your techs then are Christians.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody on staff is. We
Yeah.
have a statement of faith and
Okay.
code of ethics and all of that.
Does that make it harder to find people?
Sure. Yeah.
Because they need
Because
to
you're
have-
looking for somebody who's coming from, you know, the same worldview,
Right.
who wants to do what we do, who maybe most likely is willing to make less money than they might at another job.
Right.
You know,
And they're medically trained.
yes, some of them are medically trained.
Right,
Some of
yeah.
us are administrative. Other people
Yeah.
are doing other things. But yeah, and you know, there's all kinds of medicine. Instead of working in an ER and seeing a variety of things, they're doing the same thing every day.
Right.
But the return is great when
huge.
minds are changed. And
You're
so
literally saving lives.
we're trying.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when we don't save a physical life, we have an opportunity to speak eternal truth into their
Right.
lives.
Plant that
It
seed.
doesn't happen every time. We look for opportunities, ask for permission. You know, we're feeling our way along there, but we try to share the gospel when we can. And I always say to people, if she leaves and has an abortion, but has heard the gospel and that seed is planted, that's a win that day.
Right.
We'd love a double win, but we'll take an eternal win. You know?
Yeah. Going back to, you know, churches in the area that are not pro-life, what's amazing is even people, well, for example, probably 5 years ago, about 5 years ago, we did an adult Sunday school series on the pro-life movement, making a defense for the pro-life movement and what does the Bible say about the unborn. And maybe a couple weeks in, a church member came to me and expressed that someone who is the wife of a deacon was upset that we were doing this. Mm-hmm. And I was like, why? And, you know, we weren't showing like pictures of, you know, aborted babies or anything like that. So there wasn't anything uber sensitive. And it was told me, well, she was pro-abortion or pro-choice, which is essentially pro-abortion. And so it's shocking that even and our statement of faith makes a very explicit statement about being pro-life. So I don't know how that person became a member and affirmed our statement of faith, but even in churches that are quote unquote pro-life, you may find, now they've since gone on and gone to a gay affirming church. So, I mean, it kind of fits that mold, but it's amazing what you run into and what pastors have to deal with, because that's all drama that you have to deal with as a shepherd and dealing with people getting upset and that type of thing. So yeah, I mean, it's hard for pastors you're right. They have to be willing to take a stand on a sensitive subject and then pay the price. So
Yeah. But I mean, when you boldly take a stand, I think some will stay and
some will go.
I mean,
That's right. Yeah. Okay. So, what are some things that churches can do to help get involved?
yeah. In a broad sense, I'd like them to get educated on what abortion is, responses to pro-abortion arguments, and that just takes a little education. It's not rocket science, but I confess that I didn't know a tenth of what I know before I was in this job,
Sure.
and
There's always more to learn. And,
there's always
yeah,
more to learn,
that's
but there is a basic level of understanding and
Right.
understanding where people are coming from when they ask a certain question. And
Sure.
and so I would say that is one way. One thing what we try to offer is lately, I'm the one that does it, but we have been offering to churches like a 45-minute, 60-minute class. We're probably going to cover some of it here today, so you can check that
Okay.
box. But, pro-life responses to pro-abortion arguments and how we can lovingly engage and share a pro-life perspective with other people. And I think wonderful, believing Christians who have strong convictions about abortion feel tongue-tied on that subject
Sure.
for a number of good reasons.
Yeah.
So we try to bring information to them that will equip them to have more confidence in having that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And the less you know, the less confident you are.
Right.
So, I mean, that's part
harder-
of the problem.
More forcefully someone starts coming at you with something, and there's usually a lot of emotion in it. So, just trying to equip people to peel back the emotion and don't even engage if you can't
Right.
engage with love and with grace.
Yeah.
But, getting educated. Other things they can do, they can pray for us. I've mentioned that. Pray consistently. They can volunteer. That looks like different things.
What would be some examples of things that they can volunteer for?
Well, when somebody is interested in volunteering, I said, let me first ask you, what kind of time you have to volunteer.
Give.
If they say, well, I can volunteer on Saturdays, we're not open on Saturdays except for once a month, and that's really just a medical, appointment. So I'll say, okay, we've got some one-time projects that you might be interested in. We've got a couple that maybe your small group could do together. If they say, I'm free every Tuesday and Thursday all day long, well, that might be a different story.
Right.
And what I answer this month is a little different than how I'll answer next month based on our volunteers and what's going on.
Yeah.
So we just start by having a conversation with me, and I tell them what our current needs are. We have people who clean the clinic instead of hiring a outdoor company to do our cleaning.
Okay, so it's all volunteer based for that?
It's volunteer based
Oh,
for that.
wow.
That's an hour and a quarter
I bet it
every other
saves
week.
you a lot of money because that's
Yes.
not cheap.
Well, and it's a clinic, and we want
Yeah.
it looking professional
Spick
and
and
clean.
span.
We do the sanitary stuff, but they do the, cosmetic stuff.
Right.
We have groups making dinner to bring to our classes, our parenting classes, for people who come straight from work. So there's a variety of ways, but it all starts with a conversation with the volunteer coordinator, who's me.
Okay.
So they could just give me a ring.
Nice. Okay, very good. And then what are some, you just alluded to having that basic knowledge base so that they can have pro-life responses to pro-abortion arguments. What are some of the most powerful or hard to respond to pro-choice arguments that you guys run into?
There's a lot.
Yeah.
You saw I just reached for a sheet because this is
Where do I start?
we could talk about this for a long time because there's
Yeah.
one that this is one I hand out at some of our events. But there's a lot of issues. I think the one that is most prevalent right now is abortion is a woman's issue. My body, my choice. And the way it's presented on social media and in other places pretty much is intended, I think, to immobilize 50% of the population. So if it's a woman's choice and you're not a woman, then how dare you speak into it? So we've just gotten rid of 50% of those.
Yeah, men can't talk about this.
No, right. And, when people are addressing that, I challenge them to say, the baby inside that woman has its own distinct DNA.
That's right.
It may well have a different blood type than the mother. It has 10 fingers that are not the mother's. It has a personality that may be very different from hers. She has a body, and I think she should be entitled to do with her body whatever she wants. But I don't think that she should have the right to do with someone else's body.
Right.
Now, how you say that is critical.
Yeah.
I had a guy come to my door one time, middle of the summer. He was from Planned Parenthood. Rang the doorbell, and he was all friendly and said, "Hi, are you Kelly White?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I'm from Planned Parenthood." And I thought to myself, wow, you made a wrong turn. what's going on? And I said, oh, hi. And put on my happy face, my smiley, friendly face. And we started chatting, and I asked him how he ended up working for Planned Parenthood. And he said, well, I needed a summer job, and I don't believe anyone should be able to tell a woman what to do with her own body. And I said, I totally agree. I said, though, I was thinking about it, and one day I realized that body inside of her is not her body. That's another body who doesn't get to speak for itself. And he just looked at me blankly, and he said, I never thought about that. And then my sinful side said, well, maybe you should have.
Right.
But I didn't say that. It was actually very instructive for me to think, okay, Kelly, quit being so judgmental about where they're coming from. He has not thought about that.
Right.
I do wish he had thought about that.
Sure.
But he did not have some grandiose agenda where he'd thought through all the issues. He needed a summer job, and that argument made sense.
Yeah.
And so I try to keep that story in mind when I'm talking to people. And in addition to that, it is incredible the number of people, including women in my church and yours, who have been impacted by abortion, and men. And when I'm talking to someone, I try to just say, this person, let's assume they've been impacted by abortion personally.
Right.
And I don't know the story, and there's probably a lot of pain, and I need to be really careful that I am being sensitive to the pain that they've experienced. So I can still speak truth, but I need to do it in a way that is keeping that in mind.
Yeah. And I mean, thinking about this guy, and again, I don't know anything about the guy that had never thought about these things, but somewhat in his defense, he's being raised in a culture that from very early on in the public school system, this is being pushed. Everywhere around him, I would say the pro-abortion argument is probably more prevalent on media than the pro-life movement. So really, when we talk about our sources of information, right, that's forming our minds, our thoughts, probably the majority of that information that he's received has been pro-abortion, pro-choice.
For sure. And in his defense, he was doing what seemed like the right thing to do.
Yeah.
To care for women. So,
right.
Anyway, I try to challenge with that argument. I try to challenge people to think about, is it her body? And granted, she is more impacted than anybody else.
That's right. Yeah.
So I get that. But like the issue that our country was being pulled apart for 200 years ago, there were people whose land and property and profits and family were sustained by slavery.
That's right. Yeah.
And
we didn't go, oh, well, that's really hard on them.
Well, there were people who said, I don't believe it's right, but I'm not going to speak into it because that's
right.
your business.
Right.
Well, thank goodness somebody did.
That's right.
So that's kind of...
yeah. Well, that's interesting. I mean, what that argument... I'd want to take that argument to its logical conclusion that because you're a man and this is a woman's issue, you can't speak into it. So would that same person say a women's right rally, men couldn't attend and men couldn't support because it's a women's issue, not a man's, and they don't have any right to speak into it? Well, of course not. They want as much support as they can get. So it seems like we're picking and choosing when it's convenient about who can speak into something. And think about all the issues that we have a right and a responsibility to speak into, but we don't have experiential knowledge. I'm not in the military, but as a U.S. citizen, I should be able to speak about the military and vote on these things. No one goes, well, because you're not in the military, you can't speak on these things. It seems like there's all kinds of things that we can speak into, even if we aren't the one experiencing it. We maybe should come with some humility and listen and learn, but it doesn't mean we don't have the right to speak on these things.
Yeah, certainly to speak. And to the military analogy, the person with the military experience probably has more experience to
That's
speak
right.
into it. But we're talking about something that we maintain is a moral issue, not a policy issue.
That's right. Yeah.
So if it's a moral issue, hopefully we should all care about it.
Yeah.
But again, critical that we consider what the woman is going through and come alongside, and what can we do to, support her, support life, because
Yeah.
she is the one who is most impacted, for
Right.
sure.
Okay, so talking about some of these pro-abortion, pro-choice arguments, what are some other ones that you find that, so it's my body, this is woman's issue,
Yeah.
don't tell me what to do with my body,
Yeah.
and your response is that's a distinct, whole, living human person
Yeah.
with oftentimes with its own sex that's different from the mother's half the time, its own blood type, right, and it his or her own DNA that's distinct and different from the mother's. It seems like that's a separate body that that woman is given life to.
Yeah, yeah. There's a new study out by an organization. Focus on the Family. I read an email on it today. It's very new.
Okay.
And the study cites what we've been learning lately is that in this moment in time in our culture, women are less influenced by arguments that say, this is a baby and you should therefore care for it. Kind of what we're talking about. That's a distinct person. That is less influential on a woman's decision to abort or not abort today than
That doesn't impact them very much.
not as much. The messaging has been that she should pursue her dreams, be empowered
Yep.
to do what she wants to do, and the focus is more on getting the problem out of the way to be all that she can be.
Her baby's just a hurdle to success.
Yes, or to whatever it is. Maybe it's success or whatever.
Independence,
She was-
happiness.
any number of things.
Yeah.
A degree,
Right.
or whatever.
Her plans.
Yeah, yeah. So that's interesting. So another argument that is kind of emotionally charged is that abortion is health care and everyone is entitled to health care.
Right.
So when presented that way, it sounds like the other side of the argument must be saying, nope, we don't want people to have health care. But like so many difficult discussions these days, it all comes down to a definition of terms.
Yeah, defining what you mean by that.
Yeah, there's like
Yeah.
so many examples of that.
Yes.
But
And just to chime in, it seems what the pro-abortion advocates are so good at is renaming abortion. Even the word abortion, right? You're calling the killing of an innocent person something else, right? So you're not calling it killing, you're not calling it murder, you're calling it abortion, and then you're not even calling it abortion, you're calling it health care.
right.
So you're kind of whitewashing a very bloody act.
Well, and if you really want to get confused with terms, you call it reproductive health care.
Right, reproductive health care, right.
But we are actually ending the reproductive part of it.
That,
But,
yes.
So I like to present, I've got this definition from some secular source. Health care is the improvement of health via the prevention, diagnosis, treatment, amelioration, or cure of disease, illness, injury, and other physical and mental impairments in people. The truth is, abortion causes more risk to a woman's health
Sure.
than the pregnancy. And pregnancy is not an illness, a disease. What are these other things? Injury, impairment.
Yeah.
It is a condition.
Yeah.
It's a situation that often people are looking to get out of, but it is not something that requires help to save a life. Now,
Right.
health care to help them in the pregnancy, that's another issue, and it's not what they're talking about when they say, everyone's entitled to health care.
Right.
So,
Yeah, we're not saying women can't go to their doctor and get care for the pregnancy. We're not saying women don't have that right.
no, not at all.
Yeah.
In fact,
You guys are
we
even
would be
you're
all for
providing
that.
that.
Yes,
Yeah.
we do that for free. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I just got another article today that said 1 in 10 women experience serious adverse effects after taking the birth control pill, which is the primary way abortion's done today.
Really? Okay. So you're no longer is it you're going into the doctor and getting it, it's
Well, about
primarily by the pill.
63% of abortions today are done via the pill.
Wow.
Typically alone. A woman is alone. As long as we're on the subject, there's a number of risks to her health that she does not know. She can order that pill incognito to her mailbox. I got online to see how hard it was, and it was very easy. When it asks if you're over 18, you just lie. You know, I mean, there's nothing stopping anybody.
Right.
And if she has an ectopic pregnancy, that can be fatal if not treated correctly. If she doesn't have a viable pregnancy, she may spend a lot of money on that pill, and the pregnancy is no longer viable, but somebody's profiting from it. And if she's beyond 10 weeks pregnant, which many, many women don't have that accurately dated, that can be risky for her. The pill is designed to abort a baby at less than 10 weeks. And if she's more than 10 weeks along, it can be an incomplete abortion, lead to an infection and serious problems. So there's a lot of really good reasons to not be alone. But that is the situation that most women are in.
Yeah, I'm thinking about you have due dates, and oftentimes the baby might come 2 weeks after the due date or even before the due date. And what I think some people don't realize is it's not like the baby came early or came late. It was that due date wasn't completely accurate. Mm-hmm. The baby might have come right on time. It's just the date was wrong. And so you're right. That's not always a super accurate.
Well, we have women who are very off, not by a couple weeks. So that could be just downright dangerous if she did not have medical, oversight.
Attention.
So the idea that providing health care by opening the floodgates for pills to go out to whomever ordered it online and making that legal, that's not health care. That's not looking out for her best interest.
Right. Yeah, that's self-care.
Right. And not to mention, in the trafficking world, the pill's the best thing that ever happened.
Oh, sure. That keeps their product on the market. And you shouldn't refer to a human person as product, but that's how they think of them.
Right.
Yeah.
And, that woman is not getting health care. In fact, she's being abused instead of being cared for.
Well, it's so interesting how Satan, the world, our own sinful flesh makes sin, it privatizes sin and it makes it more easily accessible. So you think about pornography. Used to be you'd have to go to the bad part of town, into the adult bookstore. You'd risk being seen by others. Now you can just easily access it on your phone. A kid can do it. It's free. You can, no one has to know. And we're now making abortion that way. You don't have to risk being seen going into the clinic. And even having to go into the clinic may prevent someone from doing that. Just having to take that extra step and extra trouble to do. Now we've made it up. You just pop a pill. You can do it in the privacy of your own home. No one will know. We're making sin that much easier to do and more tempting, really.
Right. And when complications arise, and they do all the time, today I found out 1 in 19 women undergo traumatic additional procedures as a result of taking the pill. That's kind of high.
Yeah.
She may end up in the ER because we've opened the door to, quote, health care.
Right.
And, that doesn't even speak to her emotional, spiritual well-being.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I know that women who haven't had an abortion, the suicide rate goes up compared to women who have not had an abortion.
Yeah, and rates of depression are much greater.
Yeah. So, you have all this regret. What if? What would my child be like? And again, you're doing it all in the privacy of your own home, presumably. No one knows. And so no one knows to give you that emotional follow-up after.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not really healthcare.
It's not healthcare.
Yeah, it's good marketing is what calling it healthcare is.
Yes. Which gives me an opening to say one other thing. You ask what we do. We also offer abortion recovery
Oh, that's great.
in the form of Bible study for believers or just recovery mentoring. And we know that it's very necessary and that women sometimes carry it for decades. So we can connect them to a program that's confidential, not even at the clinic. And we have it for men too, that enable them to spiritually, emotionally work through that and come out better on the other end.
Right. And that's so important because I'm sure presumably there's shame that comes with that. And so providing an environment where people feel safe to share this, they're not going to be judged, they're not going to be kicked out, they're going to be accepted, received, and followed up with is what I would think would be enormous for women to know there's a place like that for them.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're watching and you have had an abortion, there's hope, right?
Absolutely. We have volunteers and staff members who have had abortions and have worked through that and come to want to support other women who are, dealing with the same decisions.
Yeah, and for someone who has had an abortion, there's not just hope in this life, but there's hope for eternal life. Someone may think that the devil may deceive them into thinking that there's no way God would forgive them, accept them, receive them. But we know that God removes our sin as far as the east is from the west. He washes us white as snow, and he justifies us, redeems us, forgives us, that if we confess our sins, he's faithful and just to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So there's hope in Christ for someone who has had an abortion.
Absolutely.
That God will receive them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good news.
Yeah. So, other pro-abortion arguments. Like where to begin?
But are there ones that you hear more often?
That we hear. It's more about convenience in terms of our people who are coming to the clinic. I'd say my body, my choice. It's a woman's issue. That's probably the number one. That's just a reflection of what culture is echoing right now. If you say anything 3 times, people start to believe it. Yeah. So that would probably be the number one.
Yeah.
And
do you hear like the unborn is just a parasite, and because the unborn depends upon the mother, therefore it's not, the mother has the right to get rid of that parasite and not have it be depending upon her.
Yeah. Well, to that, I would hope that they are not, treating the diabetic husband or the elderly grandma.
Yeah, someone on dialysis.
Right. I mean, there are a lot of scenarios where we have people dependent on other people who we love very much.
Sure.
So, it might be a convenient argument for that, but it doesn't really apply in other areas of life.
Yeah, I mean, just even think about a newborn baby, how dependent a newborn baby is on his or her parents. And if they were to leave the child, it would not live.
Or a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old.
Or
a 3-year-old.
And in fact, isn't that what they used to do? Is called exposure, right? They would just leave the child outside and it would die of exposure because the child is, even once born, completely dependent upon someone for sustenance.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is one of the main ones we hear. Rape and incest is usually one that gets thrown out there.
Yes.
More as a deflection, I think, than as because the reality is, and statistics support this from secular sources, not pro-life sources, but, and not to diminish it at all, about 1% of all pregnancies are due to rape and incest. And
what percent is that?
1%.
Less than 1%. Yeah.
And I can't imagine the trauma involved, but abortion is looked at as a solver to the problem of the trauma. And
Which is more trauma on top of trauma.
I think it's important to say, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, an abortion creates trauma
That's
on
right.
top of the trauma, and it doesn't really address the issue of the child conceived in rape,
Right.
which is, again, horrible. Let's surround that woman with all the resources in the world
Correct.
to help her deal with that trauma. But it does not really address the personhood issue of
Right.
the baby conceived.
See, I find as a pastor that many Christians are convinced by the rape and incest argument. I'll hear Christians say, I'm against abortion, except for in the case of rape and
It's
incest.
emotionally very compelling.
Sure.
I mean, if our loved one had experienced that, we would want the situation to go away more
Right.
than anything.
Sure.
And hopefully we would have the courage and the strength and all that it took to come alongside that person and recognize the person inside, you know. And I don't diminish that. I've not been in that person's shoes, but it doesn't change
Thankfully,
the person
yeah.
issue. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Scott Klusendorf's book, A Case for Life, he calls it Trotting Out the Toddler. And he says, in any of these situations, what about the case of rape, you know, and the argument may be, well, the mother would have to look at her child and would be they might look like the rapist. And he'd say, well, okay, you trot out the toddler. If let's say she did have the baby and the baby were a year old now, and the baby does remind her, would it be okay because her child reminds her of the rapist to kill the baby then? Well, of course not. Well, so then that's no reason to end the life prior to birth either.
Right.
And so he often says, trot out the toddler and take that same example and apply it to a 2 or 3 or 4-year-old, and it doesn't hold up.
Yeah. And he's wonderful.
Yeah.
Everything he's written is very helpful. So back to your question, what should churches do? What should Christians do? I'd say, well, you can get a book of Scott
Klusendorf, yeah.
And
His name's like Eichelberger. It's not easy to say.
no, it's not.
Yeah.
And read it. And I've used some of his stuff in the
Yeah.
talk that I do with churches, and it's just it's very logical.
Right.
And it just helps us pull the thread a little bit. I always say our job is not to convert people from being pro-abortion to pro-life. It'd be great if I could do that. But in that 10-minute conversation that we get an opportunity to have, to do that would probably, it just probably wouldn't happen. But if I can move the needle in their mind and raise doubt as to how they reached the conclusion they did, then great.
Yeah.
Maybe that's all I'm supposed to do in that little conversation.
That's an achievable goal. Like,
Yeah.
one of the hardest things to do is to change someone's mind about an idea. That's very hard to do. A similar thing that you said, move the needle. I like that analogy. Greg Koukl, he wrote a wonderful book called Tactics, and he talks about how in evangelism, make it your goal to put a stone in someone's shoe, just to make them a little uncomfortable about the gospel, to start raising some awareness. So it's whether it's a stone in the shoe or to move the needle, it's a little bit more of an achievable goal. I don't have to completely change someone's mind about this. I just want to start getting them thinking and moving the needle in the right direction. So I think that's a good goal to give people.
And sometimes it's less about what I say, about what I think, and more about me asking questions, how you arrived at your position.
Right.
And sometimes people will realize, well, my pathway there wasn't all that solid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, if we can do that in a non-snarky, loving way, great.
And that's the challenge, isn't it?
That's the big challenge.
When we start exchanging opposing ideas, it's easy for tempers to flare, adrenaline to get up, and you start being snarky, sarcastic, short. You want to win an argument. And really the goal is to win the person,
Right.
not the argument.
Well, and I tell people, if you're engaged and this person knows that you're a believer, it would be better for you to have a timeout and leave the room
Right.
and not engage on the subject.
Yes.
Then
Yes.
for them, maybe you move the needle a little bit and they leave the conversation saying, well, I don't want to be a Christian.
Right.
So, I mean,
That's not good.
What are we doing here?
Right. Yes.
So how we enter that conversation is everything.
Yeah.
And I've done it well, and I've done it poorly.
Me too. Me too. So you like Klusendorf's book? Yeah. It's actually going to be our giveaway today. That's why I mentioned it. We're going to give away a copy to the first person who likes, comments, and then subscribes or shares
Yeah, it's a
the
great
episode.
book.
So we'll
It's a great
send that to them free of charge. Let's see here as we move to close up. How has Dobbs versus Jackson, the overturning of Roe v. Wade, affected your ministry, if at all?
Yeah. Well, it definitely has, and it hasn't. And I'll explain that. On the one hand, our day-to-day operations before Dobbs and the day after Dobbs were exactly the same.
Right.
Dobbs returned the decision as to whether abortion was legal to the states. And in Virginia, Maryland, and D.C., abortion was legal before Dobbs and after Dobbs.
So nothing changed in
So
that
absolutely
regard.
nothing changed for us. However, it brought so much attention and division to the country on the subject that funding, media attention, all kinds of messaging, social media frenzy, attacks, physical and otherwise, on pregnancy centers ramped up after that decision. So, of course, we celebrated the decision. It didn't affect our day-to-day operation because of the state we're in, but I would say the broader battle got more intense. We had to introduce security measures at our clinic.
Wow.
We got fake Google reviews. We got fake Yelp reviews from clients who had never been to our center. Things of that nature. And even the messaging, the pro-abortion folks poured a lot of money into a lot of different things. And so you can see the trickle-down effect of that when I say that today a woman is not so much sorting through, is that a baby? We have technology to show us a whole lot that that's a baby.
Yeah.
But they just worked on convincing her that that is not only okay, but a good thing if it's enabling you to do what you want to do.
Yeah, we got to the point where it was shout your abortion.
Right.
We were, not we, but people were trumpeting that, and we're proud of it.
Yeah. So the world didn't change at all in our day-to-day, but in terms of the big picture, the country became more divided, the issue got more attention, and the work, I would say, kind of became harder because just of the amount of influence and money that was put into messaging that was not either inaccurate or shouting the wrong message.
Yeah. Speaking of shouting the wrong message, what are some things that you've seen Christians do that hurts the pro-life movement? Things that we should avoid, that we shouldn't say, we shouldn't do.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's just really basic common sense stuff, None of us wants to feel disrespected. None of us wants to feel insulted. When we're talking to that person, we need to show great respect. And the Christians, I'd say, pride's a sin too.
Yeah.
So, as we are engaging with someone whose thinking we think is just really off, we need to just look at where we've come from, what God saved us from. It may not be an abortion, but
it was some other sin.
It was some other sin, plural.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Not just one sin, Pastor. It was multiple.
Yeah. And so that's it. If we can love people where they're at. And I think working at the center has been good for me in that, we talk about this all, every day. This is what we deal with. Abortion before I worked there was this thing that was out there, this big thing that was, but we have people coming every day who are beautiful people made in God's image, who some of them have made foolish choices. Some of them were making desperate choices.
Right.
Some of them are married with children and are struggling financially. I mean, these are people. And if we can love them well,
Right.
because my circumstances weren't like that growing up.
Right.
So
That's right.
I really need to keep that in mind.
Yeah, whether we agree with the decision or not, many people who get an abortion have gone through a lot of horrendous things.
They have.
They're
And
making the wrong decision at the end, but you got to have compassion for what brought them there.
Indeed. And, some of them were made without the frontal
Right.
cortex of the brain being fully
Yeah, their brain's
developed.
not fully developed until
And,
you're,
I have-
25?
Yeah, I have friends who have had abortions. These are wonderful people who are in difficult positions, making hard decisions under stress.
Yeah.
So
So
that
being
has made me-
kind is
being kind.
yeah.
And if you can't do it, I'd suggest not talking about it and praying for a day when you can.
Yeah. I'm reminded, another, actually, his name's Brett Kunkel. He was doing a thing on the pro-life movement, and he showed a YouTube video of a group of Christians engaging with 2 or 3 pro-abortion advocates. These are just everyday people. That there is this argument that was going on, and it started turning into an argument where there was more heat than light. Mm-hmm. But his point was this: at one point, one of the ladies who was making the case for pro-abortion, she said, "Well, I had an abortion." And she got emotional. And none of the Christians caught on to it. They just kept making their arguments. And his point was that was a situation where they could have actually ministered to her, put the argument on hold, offered to pray, offered to care. But they got so caught up, understandably. I probably would have done the same mistake. So his point wasn't to judge those Christians. It was to make us more self-aware. Like, we need to be self-aware that these are people that may have had an abortion, and they may be trying to justify their own sin, and they have their own struggles, that we can minister to them there. Mm-hmm. And that might make a bigger difference than winning the argument. So we need to have those spiritual antenna up.
Yeah.
And read the room.
Yeah, absolutely. And even when there's no signals, go ahead and assume that they've got some baggage, because that's the wiser thing to do.
We kind of all have baggage, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, that would be what I would say. Just do it lovingly. We in that arena and others, we need to earn the right to be heard. So probably I need to do some listening before
Very
I
well
ask
said.
you to listen to me.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Amen. Let's see. Any strategies, tactics that could help? Well, I think we just covered that. I mean, listening. So some strategies, tactics for Christians engaging people who are for abortion or who are pro-choice would be, like you just said, listening.
Yeah, I think
Right.
asking questions, which leads to the listening.
That's right.
Someone comes out with some statement that we don't get at all. It would be much better to come back and say, tell me
Tell
why
me
you
more
think
about that. Yeah.
As opposed to why I think that's wrong.
Yeah.
Because I can deliver that message, shut the conversation down, and we can go our way. Or I can say, tell me,
What do you mean by that?
what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Or how'd you reach that conclusion?
That's right.
I might not even in that setting get to the next step in the conversation, but I am trying to establish at least that I care about them as a person.
Right.
And that might be an opening to have another conversation later.
Yeah. It's so funny. You just said, what do you mean by that? How'd you come to that conclusion? Have you read the book Tactics by Greg Koukl?
No.
So he calls it the Columbo tactic. And those are the two, Columbo, the TV series.
Yeah.
Because Columbo is so great about, asking questions. And the 2 questions that are the Columbo tactic are just that. What do you mean by that? How'd you come to that conclusion?
Yeah.
And his point is we need to ask more questions. We'll learn more about the person, and that will inform us and teach us how to minister to people better by asking questions.
Right. And
Yeah.
very often people don't, if they feel cared for and that you actually genuinely care instead of that you're trying to, win the argument,
Yeah.
they're anxious to learn, and they don't have all the information. They may
Right.
not even have heard something that you get an opportunity later to mention.
Right.
But we can sometimes go in assuming they don't have all the information and they're just making a bad choice, and that's just not the case.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you're in the right field. I had to read the book to learn those questions. You just knew them by yourself. So
Yeah.
you're in the right field, and I'm glad that the church and the DMV area has you guys and has you specifically, Kelly. I've appreciated you coming to Providence many times and helping us out, and I hope that we can be a continued help and maybe even improved help to what Assist Pregnancy Center does. And we're thankful that you're here.
Thank you.
And for the work that you do.
Thanks for all you do.
Oh, well, praise the Lord. What's your guys' website?
We have 2 websites.
Okay.
So if you want to get in touch with me or the center, as churches know, Assist Pregnancy, no, forget that. AssistPartners.org.
Okay, assistpartners.org. And that's if someone wants to get more involved
Yes.
and partner.
If they want to reach me, if they want to hear about what we're doing, events,
Sure.
volunteer, whatever, donate. If they are interested in pregnancy services, that is metrowomensva.com. And why the difference? We rebranded about 15 years ago when we became a medical clinic, and our name, Metro Women's Care, is the name of the clinic.
Yeah.
It's more consistent with the names of abortion clinics and
Sure.
other things in the area that have nice little names like that.
Yeah. Because that's who you're trying to reach.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're a woman's looking for abortion information, we don't really want her coming to the donor site and
No.
seeing babies everywhere. But she can learn about all the services that we offer, what's free, get questions answered. She can do a live chat. So if anybody had somebody who was looking for pregnancy services, that would be Metro Women's Care. They could just Google that.
Great. Metro Women's Care and then assistpartners.org.
Assistpartners.org.
All right, excellent. Anything else that you want to let everyone know about that's coming up soon, or anything to promote?
No, we just finished our walk, run, ride Saturday. And that
Nice.
was-
You guys do that every year, right?
We do it every year. So love to have people join in next year. Beautiful day and a lot of fun. So we have a banquet in the fall. If a group from your church or individuals wanted to participate in that, yes, it is
that a fundraising? Okay.
But it's also a feel-good thing. We
Yeah.
always go away hearing client stories, seeing the work that's being done, and it's encouraging. So
Yeah. Those dinners are important. What you guys do aren't free. You've got to raise funds. And so,
Yeah. But if a group just wanted a tour, if an individual wanted a tour,
They want to know
and
more.
they want to know what's coming on, you don't have to get funds. You can just call Kelly.
All right. You don't have to give anything, just call Kelly.
Just call me.
All right. Well, I think that's all for now. I hope to have you on again and learn more. And thank you for your time. This concludes this episode of Deepen Your Faith with Kelly White from Assist Pregnancy Center. God bless.